Welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, where all things football are injected right to your veins. With your hosts, Matt Donnelly, Calvin Shoemake, and Jeff Mueller.
Hello out there, and welcome again to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast. I'm not sure what episode we're on now, but tonight we have a special guest. Paul Charchian joins us from the GuillotineLeagues.com to talk a little bit about the Guillotine Leagues, Empire Leagues, and everything in between. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Nice to talk to you guys.
How did Matt do on his pronunciation there? We worked on it
pretty
so
well.
much. You guys behind the scenes have no idea. We worked on it so much before the show. I think you nailed it, Matt. That's the best pronunciation I've heard you do in a long time.
Well, it was totally wrong the first time. And then the second time is like I stopped, said half the name, and then said the other half the name. There's like a 3-second pause in between. The third time was eh. And the fourth time we're just rolling with it because we're live here. So
yeah, I kind of miss the days of telemarketers, right? The telemarketers that used to always plague your phones, they'd be like, is Mr. Charchian there? And then you knew you'd just hang up.
You knew, right?
Yes.
That's how you knew.
Yeah.
anyone who follows the show knows I screw up everything when it comes to linguistics. I think I even said that wrong, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, we're here. We're ready to roll. And Matt, we are very honored to have you join us here tonight. So we're probably going to get right into the whole meat and potatoes here.
Yeah.
We forgot to ask Paul what his safe word was before the show started.
Banana.
Pineapple.
Banana.
Okay, banana. Okay, good.
All right, you know about this bit. You know about the fact you picked pineapple was not random. That's great.
That's how we roll here. So we're going to go into a little bit of news and notes here right off the get-go because there's a little bit of talking about here that kind of affects fantasy football and 2021 season here. We've heard the latest rumors coming out of Carolina and Houston in regards to Deshaun Watson. We've just seen the latest move from Carson Wentz going from Philly to Indianapolis. What's your outlook on both those moves here so far? Well, first, the Carson Wentz we know is happening. And then it seems like Carolina's cutting some salary cap and making some moves on their end of things that this Deshaun Watson to Carolina is really starting to pick up a little bit of smoke here.
Yeah, I think this is more just Carolina knows, and I'm in Minnesota, so I know this too. Teddy Bridgewater's not the solution quarterback. He is your perfect backup quarterback, and he's going to play in this league for another decade as a backup quarterback. He is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Carolina learned it after 1 year. They know what they've got, and they've got to make a move. So you're hearing them attached to a lot of things. We've heard talk about them trying to get Teddy back here and get Kirk Cousins. There's a lot of that's just a franchise that knows they have to make a change at quarterback. So that's what I think you're hearing now. And from the Houston side, they're being smart. I think right now the savviest way to build value, should you ultimately have to move Deshaun Watson, is to not even let the phone ring right now. And you just wait until somebody's uber desperate and you play we don't need to make any deal. We don't need to make any deal and force somebody to blow you out of the water before you even pick up the phone. So I think Houston's just being very savvy about this right now. And, if you believe all the media reports that they're just not even entertaining the talks right now, but we're not even into free agency yet. So there's still a lot of time left. And I think they're being very smart about building value if they do ultimately have to make that move.
I love what you're saying there because I think what a lot of people don't realize is how much power even like Deshaun Watson has in this with his no trade clause. And one of the ways to get him to come back on that and ease up on that a little bit is to just say, no, we're not going to trade you. You're going to have to stay here. And, hopefully I think they're trying to kind of get him to back off on that a little bit and get some more teams involved because if he's picking his destination, it's not the NBA. You're not going to get full return for it the way you would there.
Yeah. They have to have some level of buy-in for Deshaun Watson on this, but I think Watson wants out. So, I think he'd go to most teams that want to take him. Where he probably won't go is like Jacksonville, right? Some team that's got to absolutely start over. He is a playoff quarterback, and I think he's gonna he's going to try to find himself in a situation where he's on a team that, he can at least convince himself is going to be a playoff caliber team.
Did Carson Wentz find himself on a playoff caliber team?
Well, hell yeah. That's a good team, right? And great defense. Well, good. How about a very good defense for the Colts? And, they get potentially a far better arm than they had last year in Phillip Rivers. And, we already know that Carson Wentz can work with Frank Reich. And I think I like this deal for the Colts. They didn't have to give up the farm. They got the Eagles to take on some of that salary, and they get a young player with a really good arm. So now, and he gets to go. I mean, the biggest problem I thought he had was just the constant churn of injuries through that Eagles offensive line that put him in constant duress. And he's just not a quarterback who can handle that with a cleaner pocket. Carson Wentz is a pretty good quarterback, and I think it's going to get really good protection behind a good offensive line. So even with Anthony Costanzo retiring, that's still a good offensive line. So I like the move, and I think Wentz is going to be on a lot of my rosters as my second quarterback next year.
Well, would one of those leagues potentially be an Empire League? And I'd like to just kind of set you up a little bit and talk about, you've got a lot of different types of leagues that, we've heard you talk about, guillotine leagues and, eliminator leagues. We've got vampire leagues. We got all kind of different leagues in the Dynasty world, like somewhat. What is an Empire League?
So, and just very briefly on the Vampire League, and I love variations of play, right? So, I'm a guy who's been in this industry for a long time, and back then it was like touchdown only scoring. And if you were a really wild league, you gave 3 points at 100 yards. And now to see all these variations of play, I think it's fantastic. My gripe with the Vampire League is it's awesome for the vampire. Yeah, for the other 11 guys, it's like, it's great for that guy. And that's my only complaint on that. That said, I encourage people to try a lot of different ways to play. The Empire League is a dynasty league. And let me ask you this, guys. The full premise of the Empire League, we'll unfold it in stages. In any league, dynasty league or redraft league, you have a rolling champion. Last year's champion was Calvin. This year's champion is Matt. Who's the champion? In any league, who is the winner? Nobody. I mean, just all you have is just who's the most recent winner. So the Empire League set out to establish the winner of a league. And here's how it works. I like playing in a dynasty format. And every year, half of the money collected from the league goes to that year's winner. Half of it rolls forward year after year, waiting for somebody to win in back-to-back years. That person cashes out that year's winnings and the rolling pot, and he or she is the champion, and the league disbands. That's it. You were the winner. You won your league. You're not just the most recent winner. You were the emperor of your Empire League. And we started the very first Empire League now almost 10 years ago. We've got $9,000 sitting in our Empire pot. When you hit that, it is, it's not life-changing, but that's a down payment on a house, for Pete's sake. That's real money. And the other part that's great about the Empire League, when you are the most recent winner, everybody's gunning to stop you because they don't want you to cash out. Right? So you have an experience unlike any other in fantasy football where 11 other people are gunning to take you down. And the other side of it is, if you're one of the 11 other people, you've got this thing you need to go do. You've got a quest, a goal. I got to take down and do what it takes to take down this other team. And if that team's really good in that second year, you might have to make a trade you wouldn't normally make to help strengthen a team that can take down the emperor so that he doesn't cash that thing out. It's so much fun. I think it's the best way to play Dynasty.
So just for our viewers in Canada, that $9,000 that's sitting in the pot is about $11,300. I just want to make sure we got that currency conversion in there.
Oh, I love it. So that's the Empire League, and I know you got a lot of people that follow Dynasty Vipers that are Empire or Dynasty players. And the reason you could do it in redraft, but the reason I like it in Dynasty is if you got to go back to back, if you had a great team last year and you're rolling that team over, you probably got a pretty good team this year. So it gives you a real advantage to try to go back to back, and you got a better chance at doing it. And what we're finding out is typically it takes 5-6 seasons. It seems to be about average. Some people do it back to first and second year, but roughly, season 5 to season 6, somebody hits it.
I think that'd be fun to play because it's almost like, okay, you know what? I don't have the team to win, but I want this pot to keep going. I don't want someone else to win this pot. So I'm going to sell my good players to a team that's close to competing, acquire some draft assets, hoping the team that's in second place can knock off the Empire.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like one giant collusion league, really. Everyone's gunning for that Empire.
It kind of is. And the collusion is a thing that you have to be careful about. What we did is we've got a rule that says if you're the reigning emperor of the Empire League, no trades.
Ooh.
You got to work it out without trades. And that's, you don't have to have that rule. You got a bunch of friends who you totally trust and, nobody would ever collude. We just said, we're just going to take it off the board and not even worry about it. We don't even want, we don't want friendships to end because there was a trade that worked out and people are pissed or whatever. So we just said, reigning empire, that's it. No trades.
It's definitely the best mustache on social media. And yes, it's real.
Paul, that's a lot of football talk and some fantasy football. I have some nonsense that I want to throw at you here. So here's you say you're now all of a sudden tomorrow you're the closer for the Minnesota Twins. All right, they bring you in.
Okay,
and the first game, it's time for you to come in, and the gates open. You're walking out. What's the music that's playing as you go down?
All right. Yeah. So I got to figure out what is my walk-up song is what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Well, okay. For starters, you need to know this. I am a instrumental music specialist, kind of. I'm not a like classic rock guy. I like rock, but I like a sliver column of rock that's called post rock, which is primarily instrumental rock. It's guitar heavy. It's loud. It does a lot of crescendos moving around. And so, what I choose may not be what, other people would necessarily choose, but my favorite band is called Explosions in the Sky. And these post-rock bands all have crazy names like Explosions in the Sky and God is an Astronaut. And so I think I might just pick some Explosions in the Sky for my walk up. I mean, it's got to work for me, right? It doesn't matter if it works for anybody else.
That's right. I love it. Perfect.
Yeah, I like it.
Post rock is essentially the Empire League of the music industry, is it not? It's chaos. It's all over. It's this, it's that. You know what I mean? It's fantastic. It's a perfect comparison there. You talked about growing up in the Minnesota area there, being around there. Just kind of explain the importance of sports in your life growing up and what that importance is even to this day. And we know you're a Minnesota guy, so you got the Wild there, you got the Twins, the Vikings, some Wolves. Of your favorite teams.
Sort of.
Well, you got three out of the four there.
Yeah, exactly. So I grew up a sports fan, like most people in big city. You got your local sports. I was a much bigger baseball fan as a kid because the Twins won World Series back in the 87 and 91, and that was the last championship we had was 1991. We've been that long since we've had a championship in this town. But over time, the Vikings really became 1A, and they've always stayed 1A in this town. This is a Viking town first and foremost, and especially after the North Stars got ripped away from our fan base. And it was horrible for Minnesotans. If you think about it, Minnesotans, what hockey means to us, to lose the North Stars was absolutely brutal. And the reason we lost the North Stars was this: our owner got accused of sexual misconduct from one of his employees. And he had been this owner that would show up in the arena and he would high five everybody. And, he was like this, he really was into the fans and his persona. And when that happened, and by the way, we think it was all true. he turned tail and just took off. He just took the team. It's like, you know what? And if I can't show my face in my own arena, I don't want to be here. And he went off to Dallas. Bad deal for us here.
So I'm sorry, Cal, I'm cutting you off here. We're talking hockey. The North Stars, I actually love the North Stars. They're kind of one of those teams. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, but the North Stars are one of those teams I always followed. They always had those nice Kelly green jerseys. Everything was like uniform, like exciting about that. But then the real kicker for me was when they went to Dallas and they stuck with the Stars moniker. So
I know.
We hate that. Still have that title. Like it's still.
I know.
And then you're stuck with the Wild.
Wild. Who the hell names their team the Wild? It's so stupid. What the hell's the Wild? If you really, how about be the Wilderness? If that's what you're really going for, it's so dumb. Only here would we do that.
Well, but speaking of being there, like I'm gonna have to like just try to be really professional for the rest of the show because like not only am I a Saints fan and you guys broke our hearts with the Minnesota Miracle.
Yeah. And then don't forget the playoffs 2 years ago, overtime in your own stadium. I mean, let's not forget that one.
Kyle Rudolph clearly pushed off. Yes, I know what
you're he did. He pushed off for sure.
And then, but I'm also an Atlanta Braves fan and Jack Morris, Kirby Puckett. So there's a place in my heart for Minnesota, and it's like, it's not necessarily the nicest place.
Yeah, the funny thing is the Saints are almost as hated for us as the Packers. Because you guys cheated your way to a Super Bowl. And then, all you had to do in overtime, you had a long kick return, then you made like one first down and you kicked a field goal and won. And then the NFL changed the rules so that the other team gets the ball because we got gypped so bad. So, yeah, we're still bitter about it a decade later.
I was at that NFC Championship game, and it's the toughest performance I've ever seen. Brett Favre played the toughest game. He was carried off the side, to the sideline multiple times, and then played the next play.
I don't know if you ever saw. Eventually, a photo came out of what his leg looked like after the Saints got done cheap shotting him in that, and the bruise on his leg. I'm not exaggerating. It's like the size of a helmet, and it was just purple and gnarled and veined all over. God, absolutely terrible.
Yes. Not exactly the proudest moment, maybe as a Saints fan. But I was glad I was there. I got to be honest. Like I was sitting there the whole time, and like it looked like Minnesota was going to win, and like maybe they definitely should have. I thought this is great to be at this game, but it could also be the worst experience of my life because you're there, and it's like you want your team to go so bad. But it could have ended in disaster.
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, you know what? And then it didn't for you. I was in attendance for the 1999 NFC Championship game. Randy Moss and Robert Smith and Randall Cunningham and a kicker who had not missed a field goal or extra point all year missed the game-winning field goal in that game. Denny Green took a knee with like 40 seconds left in the ball at midfield before half. There's just everything that could have gone wrong in one game, despite the fact we led the whole game until the very end. And that was my worst in-person NFL experience ever.
Yeah, and it sounds like Mike Wright here experienced a lot of this with you. He's been commenting here in the section there.
Wait, is it Mike Wright? The Mike Wright?
He's definitely familiar with Bounty Gate. That's for sure.
Nice.
So we kind of talk about here about the sports growing up and whatnot, and your favorite teams and whatnot. So how did you get into fantasy football as a kid? Like, because we're talking 80s, 90s here. Some of our guests we've had on, Bob Harris and stuff, we've talked about the fax machines and the 1-800 numbers.
Oh, yeah.
And the early beginnings of it. But you played in the 80s fantasy football. How did you get involved in fantasy football in the 80s?
So the first time playing, and it only sort of counts, was my middle school cafeteria. One kid said that he had heard about this thing called fantasy football, and he explained how it worked. And then we held an impromptu draft right then. Now, keep in mind, I'm in middle school, and I don't know anything about fantasy football. Nobody did then, and we're doing an impromptu draft. It's not like I had a cheat sheet with me. So I had a terrible team. My first pick. Because just, again, middle school, I'm just picking names. I knew I was very, very excited about rookie quarterback Phil Simms. So I took rookie quarterback Phil Simms with my first pick. I remember that. But that was just a 1 year, one and done thing. And the kid, he tabulated the scores and stuff. And I remember I was terrible, but I don't remember anybody else on my team. But then I played again for real starting in 1986. And I've been playing ever since.
That's crazy to me. Like the names that you've seen come across your drafts over the years. Like a lot of us, we talk about the early 90s drafts, getting the Priest Holmes, Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson. We talk about the glory days, but
yeah,
could you imagine drafting like a Walter Payton onto your fantasy football team?
Right.
You know, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Late 80s, you know, that was still Montana. You know, obviously Jerry Rice he had a long way to go at that stage, but he might have been a rookie then. So yeah, it was a long time ago back then. And and I don't want to bore everybody because I think everybody's heard stories about, like you said, the fax machine. But I'll mention this: we mailed everything around. So when you came to the draft at my house, you had to bring 16 self-addressed stamped envelopes so that I could mail you the weekly rundown newsletter, the cheat sheets, all that stuff, or not cheat sheets, the standings and everything. So I could mail it to you. And you had to set your lineup on Thursday so that I could mail your lineup around on Friday. And everybody was in the Twin Cities. So you'd get the next day, you'd get the mail and you'd get it the next day. So you know what the lineups were and you know who you were playing against.
It's just and I remember the world before, like everything was like at the, you could get any information you wanted to like right away. But like that, like, can you imagine today, like with that being how we like if my fantasy league or whoever isn't updating like immediately after I watch
yeah, exactly.
Like where's my point? What happened?
Well, and so the funny thing is when I got into the industry, not that it even was an industry, but it's 1993, it wasn't very different than that. Keep in mind 1993 when I started Fantasy Football Weekly magazine, there was literally not a single published word about fantasy football once the season started. And and it was still pre-internet. So, it was still mailing stuff around and faxing stuff around. So, yeah, I've been in the industry long enough to see it go all the way from faxes. And, we'd have advertisers that were selling fax services. We'll fax you cheat sheets. The 1-900 numbers. You remember the 1-900 numbers? Yeah. You want fantasy advice? Call our 1-900 number. We had the funniest advertiser we ever had in our magazine was a guy who sold the biorhythms of the players. Now, you guys might not remember biorhythms, but it was a thing where like they could somehow you gave it like the date of your birth or something, and it would tell you like which of your parts of your psyche and your body, they'd graph it out, which were like high and low and stuff. And they'd go, all right, week 3, all the biorhythms are aligned for this guy. So he's going to have a big game.
So it was basically like analytics back in the day.
Right.
Some numbers and making something to go there. Sorry if I offended anyone in the analytics community there. But let's stop and talk about faxing and fax machines in your day, because the fax machine kind of played a pivotal role in Fantasy Football Weekly and the Fantasy Index.
Yeah.
At one point, there's a story behind all that.
Right. So the Fantasy Index guys are awesome. And we love those guys, Ian Allen and Bruce Taylor, his partner. Great guys. Love them to death. And they had a magazine, a preseason magazine, still out today. Now it's called Index, but back then it was just called Fantasy Football. That was the name of the magazine, just Fantasy Football. And when we started our magazine that ran in season, we were Fantasy Football Weekly. Now, unbeknownst to us, they had a fax service called Fantasy Football Weekly, which was their fax service after the magazine. And we're halfway through like our first year or maybe our second year, and we get a letter from them that at the time I took as all this pride of authorship in our magazine. I took it as basically like a cease and desist. Like, like you got to stop this. We got this, we've been using this name. You came along after us. You got to stop using the name. And I was all bent out of shape and I didn't know those guys and I'm all mad. Years later, I went back and read the letter. And it couldn't have been nicer. It could not have been more conciliatory. They couldn't have handled it more professionally, more personally. But at the time, I was all wound up about it at the time. And we eventually negotiated a deal with them so that we could keep our name. And they ultimately, because of us, decided they couldn't keep using the generic fantasy football name. And then they became Index. We paid them some cash so we could keep being Fantasy Football Weekly. They went over to Index, and the rest is history.
Well, tell us about starting Fantasy Football Weekly a little bit. Like, so what was the beginning like when you were doing those faxes or calling those 900 numbers? Was that Bob Harris's number you were calling?
Yeah, no. Well, we were advertising them. So, we had this magazine. So we wanted the magazine we wanted to read in season. And so we just made it. We only distributed it in year one, 1993. We only distributed it in the Twin Cities on a test basis. And unbeknownst to us, because nobody knew anything about where people were playing or anything about the fantasy football industry, as it turned out, the Twin Cities was like the hub of fantasy football at the time. So we knew all these people that were playing, and we felt like this thing's huge. But as it turned out, once you left the Twin Cities, and especially if you went south or west, really nobody was playing. But we didn't know that. So anyway, we start this weekly magazine. We'd have to finish the magazine by Sunday night at 9:00. And you can't start writing the magazine Sunday morning to fill out 36 pages of magazine and be done by Sunday. So we would pre-write basically the whole magazine. And then we'd watch everything that was happening on a Sunday. And this is before the NFL ticket or anything. So we were trying, really, you're only watching the games we could get the Twin Cities market plus highlights, really. And we'd had a few friends in other cities that would call us with updates and stuff. And then we'd rewrite all the things that changed over the long day of Sunday. So it was just a grind from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Sunday. And we would then we'd be on the presses around midnight on Sunday. We'd be off the presses around 1 or 2 a.m. on Sunday. Then we'd be on delivery trucks at like 3 in the morning on what is, I guess, then Monday morning. And then we would be on the newsstands like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning the next Monday with everything you need to know to get ready for the next week. And nobody had any, like I said, there was no published content in season. So the fact that you had anybody else to help you dissect what was happening in fantasy football and how a game matchup might go and what the value of players is and talking about rules and variations of play and everything else, it was there was no blueprint. We just did what we just made the magazine we wanted to make because nothing else was ever published. So we sort of did everything first. And a lot of the vocabulary that you guys have ever heard about fantasy football came out of these magazines that we had to figure out words on. If you've ever talked about handcuffing picks, that was us. A goal line vulture, that's us. All these terms and stuff that we all started because there was nobody really talking our language back then.
Was anybody sliding into your fax machine to send you like?
Hey, don't give away my secrets. I slid right into Paul's fax machine on this one. But it's crazy to think about these stories. Like it's almost refreshing nowadays compared to what we see now because, like Calvin said earlier, everything's at your fingertips. Everyone's getting this. There's a lot of ups and downs along the way. Just in the magazine itself and getting the publications out and just talk about some of those trials.
So hard. Yeah. So hard. Now, all you need is WordPress, free WordPress account, and you have a website. Back then, we had to raise money so we could buy the paper and the ink and, computers. And, it was really hard to get a magazine. And even worse, you don't know this unless you're in the magazine business, and hopefully you're not. You don't get paid until 90 days off sale. So that means we basically had to pay for an entire season of magazines before we got a penny of revenue. And we didn't even know if it was selling. So as it turns out, at the end of our first year, we're just in the Twin Cities. We ended up outselling Sports Illustrated on the newsstand, and we're like, game on. So we raised more money, and then we went national with the Fantasy Football Weekly magazine, only to find out, and we sent it to all the NFL cities, only to find out people weren't playing and they didn't know anything about it in LA and Seattle and New Orleans, Calvin, back then in 1993. Nobody was playing in those parts. So yeah, and we took our lumps in the we almost We almost went under so many times. And eventually we learned the magazine business well enough that we could be quasi profitable and eventually spin the magazine Fantasy Football Weekly into fanball.com.
I remember growing up here in Canada and having the CFL. There was no fantasy CFL.
No, I'm sure.
Now, in the 80s, Warren Moon would have absolutely destroyed it with the Edmonton Eskimos.
Yeah, he did.
So he would have been that cheat code like we talked about, Priest Holmes and Marshall Faulk and LaDainian Tomlinson when we go back in these names. That's not the only problems that you guys had there off the get-go, because you said you had to go pamphlets and get those out there. And we talked about with some of our other guests that have been around for a long time, it was such a small group, you almost didn't want to promote others around you because there's such a small bit of pie, wasn't there? It was like, now it's a little bit more saturated. People seem to be more open about supporting others in the community. You see that on Twitter. Okay, Twitter's probably not the best example these days, but for the general purpose, Twitter's pretty friendly. People openly support. We reached out to you. Sure. You jumped on the show, no problem. But would you have, like, some of these original gangsters, so to speak, of the fantasy football world, would you guys have been caught dead on each other's show?
Well,
in the beginning,
it was not even an issue back then. You didn't even know these people, right? So, I knew I knew there were the preseason magazines and there was the preseason book, Cliff Charpentier's book. But, back then, I didn't know. I knew Greg Ambrosius was a guy publishing a preseason magazine, and Emil Kadlec was a guy publishing a preseason magazine, but I didn't know those guys. You didn't have any way to know those guys back then. The bigger problem we had, Matt and Calvin, was if people found the magazine, they wouldn't tell anybody else. We were their secret weapon because we were the only ones publishing anything. So you get zero word of mouth. We were the secret weapon, and nobody wanted anybody else to know about the magazine. So that was the biggest problem that we faced. Is it just doesn't work that way as much now. I mean, I still think there are some people that subscribe to a premium service or something and won't tell their buddies, but mostly I think most people know all the tricks and all the big sites and everything.
Well, I generally have the opposite thing going out there. Everyone knows what my rankings are. They follow me, like all my home leagues here in town. Joke's on them because I don't even follow my own advice half the time. That's what I call thinking here. Yeah. But for the most part, like you talk about this was like the Wild West when you got first started. And you, for one, are one of the true trailblazers of this, where we are today. Like you basically, a handful of others started this from bottom to see this empire. Oh man, see how I circled around on that? That's called
well done.
You can't write this show better. And one of the things that you saw and started was Fanball. That was one of your babies coming up.
So the way fanball.com started was, we were the magazine, and we're in like 6 years into the magazine, and it's mostly kind of a break-even thing. I had left my real job to come be the publisher of the magazine, and my first year I made $16,000 in the first year, and I think by the time we're at about year 6, I'm making about $24,000 a year, something like that, and then the .com craze hit. And we decided we needed to have a website. So we went out and tried to raise $10 million, and which is a lot. Here we are, we're a unprofitable magazine, and we decided we're going to try to raise $10 million. We raised it in 2 weeks. And
wow, that's impressive. That's before GoFundMe even started.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. We didn't kickstart it. And because the money was so easy. Back then, so this is like 1998 or so. If you had a quasi-plausible web solution, it was so easy to raise money then. And we used that money to get fanball.com up and running. And ultimately, we built a commissioner product. Fanball.com's had a Fanball commissioner. And we were powering games that, we were running all of NASCAR.com's games and PGA's games. And the website ended up doing pretty well. And we ultimately sold Fanball in 2005 or 2006. So, we ultimately, at the end of the day, was able to get there. The new owners destroyed it. It took 12 years to get it there, and the new owners destroyed it in like 2 years. But at that point, myself and my co-founders were out.
that's a gut punch almost when you watch something like that, isn't it? You get something from the bottom up. You got something they're proud of. Like you built something that you can finally sell it. Basically, is what it is. It's like restoring a nice old muscle car while listening to some post-rock music. And then all of a sudden the guy comes in, gives you some money. You sell the car, and then he just runs it into the ground.
Well, let me give you a little bit more on why we sold. So, and why we sold then. So the company's doing well, but at the time, Major League Baseball and all four of the sports and all four of the players' unions had decided that they owned fantasy football. They owned fantasy sports. They owned the stats. They owned the players, and that we couldn't use them. And if we did, they were going to sue us. And baseball season was the first one to hit. And we had all kinds of baseball games. We had baseball content. And they said the starting price just to exist is $1 million a year. We'd have $1 million a year. And so that was just what they wanted for us to continue to do business that we'd always done for free. One small company in St. Louis, CDM, decided to challenge them. But we were like, this is a company of like 10 people challenging Major League Baseball, the NFL. We're like, okay, we're all going to get obliterated. We better get out now. And so that was why we sold. And as it turns out, the little guy ended up winning. CDM ended up winning that lawsuit. And that's why, we can write about fantasy sports. You can start a website, and you don't have to pay the NFL, and the NFL doesn't get to own it. Major League Baseball doesn't get to own it. Absolutely pivotal moment.
One of those stories that you said we get the opportunity to write about it. Do you have any stories that you could just explain, these crazy stories about maybe someone you might have hired once upon a time and had them come write for you? I know Rick would love to hear the story again.
Has Rick already been on the show? Was that what you're suggesting?
No, I'm just trying to say that to make it look like I know what I'm talking about.
Okay. All right. So we start the magazine out of my apartment. And again, this is year one, 1993. And we want people to subscribe. So I just, said, we had a little thing in the, ad in the newspaper. If you want to subscribe to fantasy football, send it here. And I just used my apartment address. I was in downtown Minneapolis on the 33rd floor of this building. And so it sounded like we were a real office, but I was at 110 Grand, suite number 33A, Minneapolis, Minnesota. So, looking at it, you'd think this is like we're in some high rise in downtown Minneapolis on the 33rd floor. Nobody knows it's my apartment in real life. As it turns out, one of our loyal readers is in the building. And so one day early on, like we're only 5 weeks into the season, I get a knock on my door. Guy's there in a tie-dyed Grateful Dead shirt. He's wearing Birkenstocks, some ripped up shorts. And he says, I love the magazine. I'm a frustrated guy working at American Express. All I want to do is fantasy football. Think about it all the time. I'm a good writer. Trust me, you love it. And so I gave him a writing assignment. He brought it back a few days later, and it was really good. So I brought him in the fold. His name was Rick Kamla. Rick is now a regular voice on Siri. He ended up through his own hard work and grit, ended up working for the NBA. He ended up on the TNT NBA pregame, postgame show, and is now on the Sirius NBA channel and fills in periodically even on the fantasy channel. And it all started because he had the gumption to come knock on my door. And I had I decided to hire him, and he was my employee for probably a decade.
That's definitely that's an amazing story. And look, you saw Mike Wright was down here in the comments earlier. Like, you never know who's going to be listening to the show, but I'm pretty sure that Rich Eisen is not. And I bring that up because the next question is, would you be able to beat Rich Eisen in the 40?
Oh God, yes. What you guys don't know is I was a track star, track and cross country. I mean, I don't want to brag, but captain of the track team right here. Yeah, I was more of a cross country guy, really. So I wouldn't say I have a blazing 40, but I'm faster than Rich Eisen. I mean, I can tell you that much even now. So yeah, definitely could beat Rich Eisen. I still got the wheels for sure. Now I might blow out a hammy on the 49th the 49th yard or 39th yard or something. But, yeah, I can take icing.
It's funny because I lined up to do the 40 the other day, and it was not pretty. I'm getting up there. I've almost had as many surgeries as I have children, and I've almost got as many children. Actually, I got more than Philip Rivers, so we won't even go there.
Oh, but
That's
yeah, no, so I've almost had as many surgeries. So I get down in the stance. I'm getting ready to take off. I come up firing hard. Pop, pop, pop.
Oh God!
Like there goes the knee. There goes the hip. There goes the other hip. I'm like, I got a good solid 10 yards in. I'm like, nope.
That's it. Tap out.
It literally sounded like someone took that gun and shot it off. That's what those pops were sounding like. So,
ow.
So I'm probably safe to assume that if you weren't doing fantasy football, you probably wouldn't still be a cross-country runner. But what would you be doing in the fantasy community? Like, what would you be doing if you weren't doing fantasy?
Well, I was a network administrator, and when we started the magazine, myself and another guy was a tax accountant. We were working for an accounting company downtown Minneapolis, and we both love fantasy football. Now, I had a degree in journalism that I thought I was never going to use. Back then, you couldn't get a degree in anything computer related. So I was the network administrator, and I just, and I'd probably still be doing some kind of technology thing, I think. As it worked out, I ended up being on the radio here, and I've had a fantasy football weekly radio show in the Twin Cities for this will be our 27th year. So I'd like to think that I could have found my way back onto the radio, but probably not, because the magazine is what got me on the radio to begin with.
Well, luckily you did. And actually, right before this show, I was on doing a Detroit Lions offseason preview show with some Detroit Lions guys. And one of them was in Minnesota and mentioned how cool it is that we were going to be talking to you because he listens to you every
awesome.
day.
Oh,
yeah.
That's great. Oh, that's super cool. I don't know. Who was it, by the way? Am I going to know this guy?
No, it's Lanny on Twitter. I'll tag you in a post with him. And
All right.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. So luckily you did get into fantasy. And so like you said, you got the radio show. We certainly know that. What else do you have going on over the course of this quote unquote off season?
Well, I have a Tuesday night video game radio show on our local all sports channel, KFAN. And, if you take our demographic, right, which is, guys like us, 20s, 30s, 40s, in my case, 50, then if the thing they love the most, sports, thing they love the second most, video games. So, we have a video game show. Now, it happens that the world's best-selling video game magazine is run from Minneapolis. It's called Game Informer Magazine. And so my co-host is the publisher of Game Informer, or editor-in-chief of Game Informer. And, we just, every Tuesday night, we talk video games. Love it. It's just, I don't do it as a living. And I don't have to be the expert. That's the beauty of it. In the fantasy show, I got to be the expert. In the video game show, he's the expert, and I can be as dumb as I want. And all I got to do is just be a guy who loves video games. And that's, So that's the one of the other big passions for me is remains video games, and loved it. My brother ended up working for Xbox for 10 years. He worked for PlayStation for like 7 years. And my first, one of my very first jobs while I was still in college was at what would ultimately be GameStop store number 1. GameStop started its life as a company called Software Etc. And the very first store was in Minneapolis in the Twin Cities. And I'm like, this is it. I don't need to do anything else. I am in a good spot.
Did you cash in on those shares?
No, I wish I would have. Yeah, that would have been. I did not ride that wave. I wish I had now though. Holy cow, that was something else.
I love that story because I totally understand. Like something about you can relax when you're not supposed to be, the guy. Like I've got 3 sons and 2 of them play baseball, and I've somehow ended up as a coach on like all of their baseball teams. But my third one, he does gymnastics, and like I could just get to go watch and have fun, and like I don't know what he's doing, but is it good? I don't know, but he's having fun, and it's great,
I hear you. That's my wife. It's not my wife. My daughter. Hey, there's my wife. My daughter is on the robotics team. I didn't know how robotics competitions worked, but it was awfully fun watching, these big contraptions, dueling it out in the arenas and stuff. And I sat back and watched it and enjoyed it. We bet on it in the stands. She doesn't know that, but we were betting.
So I'm gonna skip the show sheet because you just did mention betting, and you spent 11 years as the president of the FSGA, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
and
right.
One of the big parts of that was the legalization process from gambling to skill when it comes to fantasy football. You want to kind of talk, because we're still talking about that today.
Yeah.
That's still
for
something
sure.
that's kind of in the forefront that just recently came up. This was something you started or got in on very early in the process. Just kind of walk us through that, because this is important for the fantasy football history, so to speak.
Well, my company, Fanball, was one of the original companies that joined the FS, then TA, would later become FSGA. And in 2009, I think, I became president of it, and only relinquished that in the January before last. So I'm the current past president. But without a doubt, the most pandemonium was when the FanDuel and DraftKings thing blew up in 2015. Here we are. Nobody ever talked about fantasy football and fantasy sports in a meaningful way until, from a business standpoint, you couldn't get any, it was, nobody cared. And then FanDuel and DraftKings raised all that money. They started running all those ads. And then the whole thing exploded over the controversy that most of your listeners already know. And we ended up in the middle of it. And here we are now, we're writing op-eds for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And we're basically battling the New York Times. We're battling New York's Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, who decided he just absolutely had it out for us in our industry and was trying to convince the world that we were gambling, which fantasy is not gambling. And trying to win that battle was a huge, huge, huge thing. And we feel like we eventually won it. Right now I think we're up to 20 states that have formally recognized the legality of fantasy sports and identified it not as gambling, because it's not. And I understand the distinction is tricky for a lot of people. So, I think if we, look back at anything that we accomplished during that time, it was, really helping codify the legality of fantasy sports. And, now, you can play it, and you can play fantasy sports and DFS in most states now, which is great.
And it's kind of like the whole process there. You had to lean on some people along the way. So when we talk fantasy football here, who are some of those that have kind of helped you? I know as a trailblazer, you're pretty much blazing that trail, so to speak, but everyone needs a little bit of help somewhere along the line. Who are some of those in the fantasy football community that have kind of been by your side the whole time?
Well, a couple of guys from a business standpoint, people that I work closely with that were in the FSGA with me and still are. Peter Shanky at RotoWire. Goes way, way back. He's one of the old timers with me. Rick Wolf, who's now at Fantasy Alarm, and it goes way, way back to the very beginning. Great guy. He used to attend our fantasy football. We had conferences, expos in the Twin Cities, and he would fly in. He was part of CBS Sports. He'd fly CBS Sports in, and we go way, way back to the 90s with him as well. Stacy Stern. Been able to be close with Emil Kadlik, which is great. And he worked with me on the FSGA board for a while. I respect the hell out of the football guys, people. Joe Bryant, one of the primary owners, and Sigmund Bloom is fantastic and one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And he's in your neighborhood, Calvin. And I love Sig. He's fantastic. And maybe this is the same Mike Wright. Mike Wright's here, and very pleased to call him a friend. And he's even been on my video game show, which is fantastic. Hey, there he is.
Hello.
Hi, Mike. Hey, nice timing on that.
Hello, Charch.
It's great to see you. What are you playing these days?
Oh, what am I playing? Oh, dude, I haven't played anything in forever.
Well, that's not true. You've played Dungeons and Dragons.
Video. Oh, okay, I thought you were talking video games.
Well, I was, but I happened to have seen a few of your tweets on D&D.
I have got. We have overtaken their show.
Have you really?
No, me.
Well, we have.
Right.
Yeah, we have right now. This is now just about you and I.
Yeah.
So we're doing our own thing now.
I'm here.
I'm going to let you guys in a secret. No one's here to watch me.
Right.
I'm honest about that right now.
I'm here with the worst hair of all time. I'm in my backyard. My dog is probably going to start howling at any moment. But yeah, I started playing some D&D. I played my first session. I have my second one on Thursday. Charch, did you ever play D&D?
You think I'm not nerdy enough to have played D&D growing up? Oh yeah, baby.
No, this is a judgment-free zone, my friend.
I appreciate that. I'm happy to admit it. I had through like junior year and senior year of high school, I got my druid up to level 8. So yeah.
A man after
baby.
my heart. I was a druid in World of Warcraft.
You were? All right. All right.
So I lost multiple years of my life to my druid passion. But now I'm a bard.
You're a bard.
As expected by most, that I had to be the musical class.
Now, I can't tell you how freaking awful bards were in the old days of D&D. In the old days of D&D, the bard basically had no abilities. He was just this pansy who couldn't fight and had a lute with him that would break if you hit anybody with it. But now the bard is a freaking badass now. I think they've actually overcompensated the bard.
Well, so far, my lute has already smashed a goblin's face.
Nice.
Because he scratched it, so I had no other choice.
Right. Yeah, baby. I love it.
But yeah, what's up, Vipers? I wasn't expecting to join a podcast right now. I'm just chilling on my patio.
I love it.
I seen you kind of checking it out there. I know we got you coming in March. I think it's March 19th or something as well. So Charch is going to come and crash that show as well.
Oh, we got Troy here.
Don't tempt me.
Speaking of football guys.
Yeah, congratulations, Troy, Mr. Football Guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Dynasty Dungeons and Dragons now, so we're going to go ahead and get into it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm so jealous, Mike. You're in your patio right now. I'm in Minnesota. Matt's in Canada. I can't think about going outside. Talk to me in 4 months. I'll be on my patio.
I get it. That felt like a humble brag, but that was
a humble brag.
Look, I'm in my 4-month period where Arizona is like okay, so I'll take it.
Yeah, your summer is my winter.
My summer starts in approximately 15 days. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh man, it's so cool that you dropped in. I love it. Oh, that's fantastic.
I was checking it out, man. I was learning about fax machines and.
Oh God, man, you don't know how bad the bad old days were. It was all so hard then, man. But now it's everything's better now. Everything is better now. The whole thing is great. It's I think it's awesome that you're here. This is so fun.
Paul, was there a moment that you thought like this fantasy football thing could happen and could work and then like get guys in like Mike and some of these guys that have kind of picked up the torch? Like, is there a moment that you were like, yeah, this is going to be a thing?
Well, okay. I'm going to tell you two different stories, and one's a real story and one isn't. Maybe the coolest thing that happened in my time with the magazine was I mentioned like year 2, we send the magazine out nationally. And we're like, you don't even know. You have no way of knowing, what happens to it. All you know is you FedEx this thing around, and you have no way of knowing what happens. So we just got done with our mid-August issue, which was a big deal because everybody else's magazines were written in like May, and so we had one that came out in August. And so I take my staff out to Las Vegas to blow off some steam and to place a bunch of wagers for the regular season and stuff. And we're sitting out by the pool, and our waitress, what do they call the waitress at the pool? Like the drink, the gal that's bringing drinks out. She's got our magazine tucked under her arm while she's taking our drink order. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it's like there's real people that are seeing this thing and relying on it. And so, and of course, it's cocktail. It's like the cocktail waitress, and except at the pool. And she's beautiful. So of course I'm like, well, that's like, I don't want to brag. That's my magazine you got there.
Oh yeah.
She couldn't have cared less.
Because she had confiscated it from some hooligan.
Well, she drops in. My boyfriend gave it to me. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that. But when we thought it was going to be a real thing is after the internet hit and you could start playing online. And then all of a sudden, we knew there were only like a couple million people playing. And now all of a sudden, once the internet came, you could play online. It was, the whole thing changed.
Yeah, we've seen that even on our end of things here, where it's become so accessible that anyone with a computer now, like me, can actually write about fantasy football without knowing anything. Like, it's fantastic.
Well, we didn't know anything either. I mean, we started the magazine. There was no expert. We're watching whatever was on CBS and Fox or whatever. We're watching like 2 games and trying to do the best we can with no knowledge. We would pick up out-of-state newspapers, at the one newsstand that had them. We'd go get the Denver Post and try to read the like last Sunday's Denver Post to go figure out what was happening in Denver. We didn't know. Yeah.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I know when we first started playing like fantasy hockey up here in Canada, I'm trying to relate it here because this is back in our day. We'd go get the newspaper on the Saturday where it had all the stats,
all the box scores. Yeah.
All the box scores, and they'd have it nicely done up for us by their team. And then the poor sucker would have to go and calculate every goal and assist, and add it up for everyone's team, and they'd put it on the message board at work first thing Monday morning. So that's how we kept track. So we kind of joked early about 86, you getting your start. There was no stat corrections in 1986.
Well, no, we barely had stats in 1986. The back like 4 or 5 pages of our magazine was just it wasn't just box scores, but it was all stats in a grid that had stuff like how many tight end touchdowns has each team allowed, stuff like that. And so part of what we had to do Sunday was just hand enter all the key player stats and all the defensive stats and everything. And that was the best. That was the closest thing anybody had to analytics back in the 90s. Yeah.
That's the OG strength of schedule, my man.
That was, yeah. We had original strength of schedule. Yeah. Crazy.
Original strength of schedule, the biometrics, you got everything.
Yeah, biorhythms. Yes, the biorhythms. Yes.
Oh man, I saw that part too. Getting astrologers up in there.
Yes, we had an advertiser. We had somebody to start a whole company around biorhythms of players.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
The only thing we're missing is like the horoscope people coming in there too, and like, okay, so let's see here. Phil Sims is a Taurus, and when he drops back to pass, a Taurus really is something like that.
That's about how much validity biorhythms has. Yes.
I think it was Bob Harris, Matt, that mentioned like that's why you couldn't have like point per first down or things like that. Like the idea of trying to calculate those things would have just been you couldn't
too
do
hard. No, it's too hard. Yeah, and of course, you had to wait till Monday to get the paper before you could. So get this another story, old timer story. I'm sorry, this has all gotten so old and boring.
That's what we want.
This is stuff fantastic. I love, man.
It's fantastic.
That's the point.
Earliest days of our sports radio station, KFAN in the Twin Cities, and we were one of the earliest channels to flip. So New York had WFAN, and about like 4 or 5 years later, we had one of the earliest. It's probably 1990 or so when we flipped formats from, I don't know, like classic rock or something to sports talk. And I'm not on the show then, but 2 other guys on Sunday night would sit and read the box scores on Sunday night for all the fantasy football players so you could score your league Sunday night because you had no idea how long the field goals were. You had no idea who scored all the touchdowns. You didn't know any of the yardage. And the show, and this is a little bit inside radio, a very successful radio station gets like a 4 share or a 5 share, which means they're getting 4%, 5% of the listeners are on your station. That show would draw a 20 share on Sunday night, and people would record it with their cassette recorder because it would go by really fast.
Yes.
And right? So you're reading the box score, and then they could go back and they could stop it and start it and stop it and start it. And then they could score the whole thing on Sunday night without having to wait for the Monday morning paper.
That's how I made my mixtapes from VH1.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So yeah, that was Sunday nights. Yep.
So fabulous.
Mixtape Sundays with all your fantasy advice.
Oh, there goes my dog.
What kind of dog do you have, Mike? I got 2 dogs.
I have a Bernedoodle. So she is part Bernese Mountain Dog and part Poodle.
Now the Bernese Mountain Dog's a big dog, right?
Yeah, she's pretty close to full grown. She's about 50 or so pounds, so she's not like huge.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe the poodle, I think, and I don't know what kind of poodle. Maybe it was a toy poodle and a very large dog with the parents. And then
she's got the big poodle dog legs, that's for sure.
All right. I got 2 dogs, Mike, and I'm the idiot who I get a dog and the dog's got and it's a rescue, and you don't know what you're going to get with the rescue. This dog has so much energy. We didn't know we were getting a half Jack Russell, and the Jack Russell is a crazy energetic breed. And the dog's about a little over a year old, and we're worn down by the dog. And we're like, I got an idea. What we need to do is get our dog a dog. And that dog will neutralize the first dog. Dumbest thing ever. That did not work at all. And the dogs don't even like each other. And they don't even hardly interact with each other.
Oh, no.
And one dog's way too big. The original dog's 20 pounds. The new dog is 40 pounds. They can't play because the 40-pound dog is just too big and too aggressive. And the 20-pound dog won't do it. So anyway, yeah, it's don't do it. If you're ever thinking about doing it, don't do it.
Got to get same sizers.
Same sizers, or just stick at one. It's not just like double the poop pickup. It's like a force multiplier of difficulty of fur and scratch marks on your floor and kenneling cost and vet costs and everything else. Don't do it.
Paul,
see, I actually got smart with my dog. It's a German Shepherd, so it sheds everywhere. But I actually stopped at one. Unlike my children, I stopped at one, which seems to be the smartest thing I've done. So,
that's great.
Paul, you already threw Rich Eisen under the bus and said that you would like smoke him in a race.
Yeah,
would
but
you be able to beat Mike?
You an athlete, Mike? I mean, I don't know your background here.
I can tell you this, Paul. I am the slowest of the three of us. we did a combine, and I have long jump ability.
You do.
I have no vertical jump, but long jump. I've got that.
Okay.
But both Andy and Jason, despite his,
you would not think
his unassuming rotundness, Jason is very sneaky athletic, and Andy's an athlete as well. I'm a super nerd who looks. I'll say this: I'm not the first picked. I'm not the last picked, but I'm somewhere at like the back 10%.
All right, so I take you for the long jump, maybe the triple jump. I bet you could triple jump.
Probably.
I'm not taking you for the pole vault.
I've never pole vaulted in my life.
Who has? Who has
really do that?
I mean, I don't know anybody who's ever pole vaulted. I was on the track team, a captain of the track team. I would never have considered that. Even in my heyday of running, when I was 125 pounds, I could never have done it. The strength to body ratio is so out of whack for those people. They are a whole different breed. You got to be.
They're very brave,
talented, yes, and brave, right?
Yes.
You're up 18 feet in the air, and if you go backwards, you're falling on asphalt. Those people are crazy.
I've seen too many videos of pole to pole, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Plenty of those.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The event that I liked the best in track was the steeplechase. You guys even know what that is?
The steeplechase? No.
Yeah.
No.
So the steeplechase, it's on the track, but they put up not hurdles like a regular hurdle would have, but a thick bar that runs almost the full length of the width of the track.
Okay.
And it's super big and heavy. You can't, like a regular hurdle, you can hit the hurdle and it just tips over.
Right.
This thing will tip you over, and it's tall. And on one of them, there's a big pool of water right on the other side of it. So you'll go down yay deep in water on the other side of it. So it's the weirdest of the track events. And every time there was a steeplechase, everybody stops and watch to see who's going to like wipe out trying to get over the hurdle, and you're dead. Like it's a 2-mile race. And so you're dead tired. And now you got a hurdle 4 feet in the air. And so people are always wiping out, tripping over it, and the hurdle doesn't give. So you just go tumbling, you land in the water. It's just chaos.
It's like the is it Spartan race? Is that what I'm thinking of? Like all the obstacle course races now?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. The it's not Spartan, or maybe it's called that, but there's I know exactly what you're talking about.
I know there's one called like the Warrior Race and Spartan. There's 1,000 of them.
The Tough Mudder. We have the Tough Mudder.
Yeah. The Tough Mudder. Yeah.
Yep.
I saw some dogs, cool. Charch.
Wait, Scraps, Pepper.
Yeah, bring them in.
Scraps. See, Scraps is the first dog. I had the name picked before I had the dog. Scraps.
He's not having it.
Your wife and your dog have gone down so many times behind you. Like I almost feel like you got a green screen. There's like a video just on loop playing.
Oh yeah,
there we go.
He is.
There's Scraps.
There's both of them. Get him in there.
Scraps, where are you going? Come here, Scraps. Come here. Well, you'll have to. This Pepper's a better looking dog than Scraps, but don't tell Scraps that. We don't want him to feel bad.
We won't.
Yeah.
Charles, what kind of microphone are you on over there?
This is a Blue Yeti. Does it sound okay?
It sounds great.
Awesome. Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah. We've got to do some of the radio stuff that I do. I got to do from home now because you can't always go in the studio and whatever, COVID.
Sure.
So, yeah, glad to hear it sounds good. Thank you.
Oh,
what do you use?
Well, I mean, we
at
use. I mean, when we're at home, I use I have a Shure SM7B. And in studio we have the Rode Broadcasters.
I got the Rode podcasting unit thing. Is it the same company, I assume?
Yeah. Rode's the maker. Rode's a good company. Rode and Shure both make excellent. But I couldn't see a mic, and I was like, "You're so far away that the Yeti's coming in clear, man. It sounds great."
Right. That's beautiful. Outstanding. I love to hear that.
Yeah, the SM7B is what I've got here. Although, like I'm sure you are much better at using it than I am. But yeah, it seems like it gets the job done at least.
Oh, it's fantastic. All right, I'll get you guys out of here on this one, Charles. I don't know if you saw this little guy here. I'm nerding out.
Oh, God of War, nice. All right,
got to keep it real.
Do you have your PS5?
Oh, you're darn right. So, quick PS5 story. So back when all the nonsense was going on in like November, and it's like, okay, Walmart's dropping a shipment of units. Log in at 9 a.m. Log in at 2 p.m. or whatever.
Yep.
And so we're all in the studios. We're in the fantasy football headquarters, and all of us are going for it, right?
Against each other.
Yeah. Oh, we're all against each other, and I don't tell the other guys that I'd hardwired in, and I get a PS5 first try.
Wow.
First try.
Wow.
And so I'm over I'm expecting everybody else they're going to get it right after me, but no one does, and then another drop happens, another drop, another one. There's it just keeps happening. And I'm like, oh shoot, I'm really sorry guys, but I'm going to be playing my PS5. So
that's great. I wish there was more content for it, and but we got one.
Yep.
For something.
Yep.
By the way, Immortals, Phoenix Rising. Good game.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Worth getting.
I'll put it on the list.
All right, good.
All right, fellas. Charch is good people, man.
Thank you.
Mike, thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Mike's the best. And Matt and Calvin, I should probably head off to bed here before too long as well.
Absolutely. That was kind of one of those unexpected things. I wanted to make sure we
That's so cool.
Because everyone loves Mike, and you guys got a good relationship there. And so I was like, oh, let's bring him on in. Let's get this party started here.
And okay, wait. Let me tell you a quick Mike story that from those guys that I wish I thought to tell the story while he was here, but I'm gonna tell you one more. They started doing some live events in different cities, and this is like 3 years ago. The first live event they had ever done was in the Twin Cities here in my my hometown, and we had. They're playing a venue that holds like 1,000 people, so that's not trivial to fill a 1,000 person place. And I'm going to introduce those guys for their show. And I introduce them. They come on stage, and Jason just starts crying. 1,000 people in the room. They're all cheering and yelling, screaming for him. They're all so happy. The vibe is awesome. And seeing those guys have this reaction, and for them, they had never done anything like this. They had never been in front of their audience like this. And to be there for that was really cool. Yeah.
And the best part about it is all those guys over at the Footballers, they're genuine individuals.
Oh, yeah.
If you had any opportunity to speak, and I can't wait till, I'll plug this a little bit here, March 19th when we have Mike on the show again. By the way, Charch, we're going to send you an invite to you so you can come crash that one. But
deal.
You heard it when he was talking, and the admiration he has for you and the respect he has for fantasy football in general. And it's true. And it's with all three of them, Andy and Jason as well. And I did hear about Jason absolutely whooping them all in the combine that they ran. So,
which you wouldn't think, but all right. They say it happened. I believe them.
Yeah.
Guys, it's been a blast. I hope you'll have me on again sometime.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. You basically have an open invitation whenever you want to come on. Holler at us. We'll get you on. Charch, you got anything you want to say right before you head out?
No, we've had a lot of fun. That's it. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. And just like that, that is the show for this week. Or not this week, for Monday.
Yeah, just for Monday.
We have a insane schedule coming up this week. Let me just pull everything up. Calvin, he's going to hit you tomorrow night already again. He's going to rebound quickly. He's got Taylor, Cornell, and Andrew Hall coming on to talk Cincinnati Bengals. That's going to go on at 9 Eastern. And then Wednesday, I'm excited. Calvin's excited. You all should be excited. We got Liz Loza joining us at 11:30 p.m. So you're going to want to tune in for that. That's an exciting show. And then on Thursday, we got the Seahawks Spotlight Series with Seahawks Dan Cook coming on, as well as John Hellkamp coming on as well. You're going to, from Deadspin, I believe he's worth right now. You're going to want to check that out. And then we're closing it out Friday with a 4-time Emmy winner. James Coe is going to join us. You know what? Let's pretty this up. He's going to join us in studio on Friday. It's not really a studio, but I feel like talking like we're in the big times here because we got some fantastic guests coming on. We got plenty more coming down the pipeline for this whole off season. The support that we've received for the show on Twitter has been flooring at times. So first off, thank you to everyone who's watching us. Thank you to everyone who's still watching us, and all those who tuned in and those who are going to continue to tune in. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel because you're not going to want to miss what we have planned next. Calvin, what do you got?
Just what a fun way to start the week, right? I mean, just so many shows coming. We got so much content, and you didn't even mention, we are also going to have, because I didn't add it to the sheet yet, but I will. We're going to have the Eagles talk on Wednesday as well. And then we've got the Arizona Cardinals with someone who was here in the comments earlier, the Unicorn. It's an exciting week. Great way to start it off. I'm really excited about all the shows that we have this week. So yeah, that's make sure you join us. You never know who's going to stop by.
You never know who's going to stop by.
You never know.
It's crazy things that happen here. I'm super excited about when someone like Mike just pops in there and offers a little bit of time there. That's fantastic. I know Mike, he's going to be joining our boy there, Travis, with True North Fantasy Football. They're going to be doing a little something here, I think, sometime soon. Very exciting things going around the fantasy community right now. So stay tuned. Make sure you're following the Vipers. Really exciting stuff here.
Yep. Well, I think that does it. I think that's a show.
And with that, we gone.